After 3 years of silence, I received a letter from my daughter, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest with joy. I was about to open it when my wife shouted, "Stop!" I asked, "What's wrong?" She pointed and whispered, "Can't you see?" I looked closer, and what I saw shocked me to the core. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My hands trembled as I reached for the mailbox. Something about the white envelope on top made my pulse quicken before I even saw the handwriting. 3 years of empty mailboxes had trained me not to hope, but there it was, Naomi's careful script spelling out my name. August 31st, her birthday. How could I forget? I held the envelope against the afternoon light, studying the familiar curves of her letters. The return address showed her Lincoln Park apartment, the same place where everything fell apart. My chest tightened with possibilities I'd buried long ago. "Minnie!" I called, rushing up the front steps. "Minnie, get over here, quick!" My voice cracked with an excitement I hadn't felt in years. The screen door slammed behind me as I hurried through the living room, still clutching the envelope like it might disappear. "What's all the shouting about?" Minnie appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her gray eyes immediately found the letter in my grip. "Look at this." I held it up, watching her expression change from mild annoyance to surprise. "It's from Naomi, today of all days." Minnie stepped closer, adjusting her glasses. "That's her handwriting, all right?" She touched my arm gently. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Ralph?" I turned the envelope over in my hands, feeling its weight. Not heavy enough for multiple pages, but substantial. Real. After 3 years of silence, my daughter had written to me on her 38th birthday. "I keep thinking this might be it," I whispered. "Maybe she's finally ready to talk." The afternoon sun slanted through our front window, casting everything in golden light. Outside, neighbors were coming home from work, children playing in yards, the world continuing as normal. But inside our house, time had stopped. Minnie settled into the chair beside me, her presence steady and warm. "Whatever it says, we'll handle it together." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. 3 years of hoping, of failed attempts, of lying awake wondering if I'd been too harsh, too stubborn. 3 years of missing my daughter's laugh, her quick wit, the way she used to call me every Sunday just to chat. The envelope felt heavier now, loaded with possibilities. Reconciliation, forgiveness, maybe even an invitation to be part of her life again. Or perhaps another rejection, another door slammed in my face. I set it carefully on the coffee table between us, afraid to tear it open, afraid not to. The silence stretched until I could hear the kitchen clock ticking in the next room. "She remembered I'd be thinking of her today," I said finally. Minnie's hand found mine. She always was thoughtful like that. The memory hit me then, sudden and sharp, not of recent years, but of birthday mornings when Naomi was small, racing down these same stairs in her pajamas, eyes bright with anticipation. Before life got complicated, before Ethan, before everything went wrong. I picked up the envelope again, studying the careful way she'd written our address. No mistakes, no crossed-out letters. She'd taken time with this, planned it. That had to mean something good. "I can't remember the last time I felt this nervous," I admitted. "August 31st, 2022, Minnie said quietly. "The day you decided to drive over there and try to talk sense into her." The weight of that memory settled over me like a heavy blanket. That terrible afternoon that changed everything between us. But maybe today would be different. Maybe this letter would finally bridge the gap that had grown between us. I held my breath and prepared to tear open the envelope that might contain my daughter's words of forgiveness. I sank into the kitchen chair, the envelope still unopened in my hands. The familiar weight of it triggered something deep in my memory, transporting me back to that September afternoon 3 years ago when everything unraveled. I remembered standing outside Naomi's apartment building, my finger hovering over her doorbell. The Lincoln Park neighborhood bustled around me. Young professionals rushing home, couples walking dogs, the energy of a city that never slowed down. I'd driven there with such determination, convinced I could make her see reason about Ethan. The apartment buzzed me up without question. When Naomi opened her door, she looked tired in a way that worried me. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect posture slightly slumped. "Dad, What are you doing here? We need to talk, sweetheart, about your marriage. Her jaw tightened immediately. If this is about Ethan again, it is about Ethan, and about you making the biggest mistake of your life. She stepped back, but didn't invite me in. I'm 35 years old. I don't need relationship advice from my father. When your husband is gambling away your future, you need advice from someone who cares about you. That's when Ethan appeared behind her, his hand possessive on her shoulder. The sight of him made my stomach churn. Too smooth, too charming, the kind of man who could convince you to give him your last dollar and thank him for it. "Ralph," he said with false warmth, "what brings you by?" "I'm talking to my daughter about the casino receipts I saw in your car last month." Naomi's face went white. "You were snooping in our car?" "I was helping you move that bookshelf, and papers fell out of the glove compartment. $1,200 in one night, Naomi. How many nights like that have there been?" Ethan's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold underneath. That was a work event. Client entertainment. "Don't lie to me, son. I know the difference between business expenses and addiction." "This is my life," Naomi exploded. "My marriage. My decisions. When are you going to stop treating me like a child? When you stop acting like one? This man is destroying your credit. Probably already drained your savings. You don't know what you're talking about." But I could see in her eyes that I did know. The way she couldn't quite meet my gaze, the defensive set of her shoulders, the way Ethan's grip on her shoulder tightened possessively. "What about family, Naomi? Doesn't that mean anything to you anymore?" "Family?" She laughed bitterly. "You mean the family that never accepted my choices? That questioned every decision I made? We questioned this one because we love you." "No, you questioned it because you can't control me anymore." Ethan stepped forward then, his voice silky with false concern. "Maybe it's time for some space, Ralph. Let Naomi make her own choices without interference." The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced. I watched my daughter's face as she absorbed his words, saw her building walls I'd never be able to scale. "He's right, Dad. I think you should leave." The words hit me like physical blows. "Naomi, please, just think about what I'm saying." "I'm thinking, and I'm choosing my husband over your suspicions." The door closed in my face with a soft click that echoed like thunder. I stood there for several minutes, hoping she'd change her mind, hoping the door would open again. It never did. Now, sitting in my kitchen 3 years later, I could still feel the weight of that rejection. The drive home had been the longest of my life. The memory of that closed door led me to remember everything that came after. 3 years of desperate attempts to bridge the gap that seemed to widen with each passing month. I'd started calling the next day, then the day after that. Voice messages that went unanswered, text messages that showed as read but never replied to. Minnie watched me wear a path in our kitchen floor, pacing with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to Naomi's recorded greeting over and over. "Hi, sweetheart, it's Dad. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about yesterday. Maybe we could grab coffee and talk things through. Call me back." She never did. By October, Ethan started answering her phone. "She doesn't want to talk to you, Ralph." "Let me hear that from her." "You heard it when you drove over here uninvited and upset her? Leave us alone." The line went dead. I tried driving to her apartment twice in November. The first time, Ethan met me in the lobby, his expensive suit and practiced smile making my working man's clothes feel shabby. "This has got to stop," he said, blocking my path to the elevator. "You're causing her stress." "I'm causing her stress? What about what you're doing to her bank account?" His smile never wavered, but his eyes went cold. "Careful, old man. Harassment is a serious charge." The second visit was worse. He met me at my car before I even reached the building. "I warned you," he said, pulling out his phone. "One more visit, and I'm calling the police. Naomi doesn't want to see you." Christmas was the hardest part. I'd always been the one to pick out Naomi's gifts, spending weeks finding exactly the right thing. That year I chose a beautiful leather journal, the kind she'd loved since college, with her initials embossed in gold. It came back unopened. Returned to sender, stamped across the package in red ink. My birthday cards came back the same way. Mother's Day flowers for Minnie, returned. Every attempt at connection bounced back like I was throwing stones at a brick wall. The final attempt came last spring. I'd heard through Nancy that Naomi's IT company had moved to a new building downtown. I took a sick day from work and waited in the lobby, hoping to catch her during lunch. When she appeared, walking with colleagues toward the revolving door, my heart nearly stopped. She looked thinner, tired, but still beautiful. Still my little girl. "Naomi!" She turned, and for a split second I saw something like longing in her face. Then it shuttered closed. "Dad, you can't be here." "Just 5 minutes, please. We used to be able to talk about anything." Her colleagues had stopped, sensing drama. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Ethan will be furious if he finds out you were here." "Then don't tell him. This is between us." "Nothing is just between us anymore." Her voice cracked slightly. I made my choice. "You can unmake it." She shook her head, and I saw tears threatening. "It's too late for that." She walked away without looking back, leaving me standing in a corporate lobby, surrounded by strangers who pretended not to stare. That night, I told Minnie I was done trying. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. But sitting here now, holding this unexpected letter, I felt that old hope stirring again. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe some bridges could be rebuilt after all. I stood up, carrying the letter with me as I went to find Minnie. Whatever this envelope contained, we'd face it together. I walked back through the kitchen doorway, the envelope clutched against my chest like a treasure. Minnie sat in her favorite armchair by the living room window, afternoon sunlight catching the silver threads in her hair as she worked on her crossword puzzle. "Minnie?" My voice came out softer than intended, reverent almost. She looked up, pencil suspended midair. "Ralph, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Better than a ghost?" I held up the envelope, my hand trembling slightly. "It's from Naomi. Today, of all days." The crossword book slipped from her lap as she stood. "Are you certain?" "Look at the handwriting. Those careful loops. The way she crosses her T's." I brought the envelope closer so she could examine it. She remembered it's her birthday. She's thinking about us. Minnie adjusted her reading glasses, studying the address with the focused attention she'd once given to student papers. "It does look like hers," she said slowly, after all these years of silence. Maybe she finally understood that family is the most important thing. The hope in my own voice surprised me. Maybe Ethan's control isn't as strong as we thought. She reached for my free hand, squeezing gently. "Oh, Ralph, I've missed her so much." Her laugh, the way she used to call with every little triumph at work. Remember how proud she was when they promoted her to manager? Before he poisoned her against us. The old anger tried to surface, but I pushed it down. Today was about hope, not bitterness. But this letter changes everything. She reached out first. We stood there together, both staring at the envelope that might contain our daughter's words of forgiveness. The living room felt charged with possibility, like the air before a thunderstorm that promises to wash everything clean. "What do you think she says?" Minnie whispered. "Maybe she's pregnant. Wants to tell us about grandchildren." My imagination ran wild with possibilities. Or she left him. Realized we were right about his gambling. Or she just misses her dad. Minnie's eyes filled with tears. 38 years old today, and part of her is still our little girl who used to climb into bed with us during thunderstorms. I nodded, remembering birthday mornings filled with pancakes and torn wrapping paper, when making Naomi happy was the easiest thing in the world. Before life got complicated, before we lost each other in a maze of pride and misunderstanding. "Whatever she says, we'll face it together," Minnie said, settling into the couch beside me. I positioned my finger under the envelope flap, ready to tear it open and discover what our daughter wanted to tell us after 3 years of silence. The paper felt substantial, important, real. "Here goes nothing," I murmured, starting to lift the flap. "Wait!" Minnie's sharp voice made me freeze. My finger stopped halfway under the envelope flap, Minnie's urgent tone cutting through my excitement like a blade. "Wait for what?" She leaned closer, squinting at the address through her reading glasses. "Give me another look at that handwriting." "Minnie, what's wrong?" "Something's not right." She took the envelope from my hands, holding it up to the window light. "Look at how she wrote your name. See the slant?" I studied the letters more carefully, irritation prickling at my hope. "It looks fine to me." "No, Ralph. Naomi's writing always slanted to the right. Always. 30 years of grading papers taught me to notice these things." Her finger traced the letters. This slant's left. Maybe she's stressed. People's handwriting changes when they're upset. Not the fundamental slant. That's muscle memory. Minnie held the envelope at arm's length, then close again. And look at the pressure. Naomi has a heavy hand. She presses hard when she writes. These letters are too light. My chest tightened with a different kind of fear. You're imagining things. Am I? Look at this A in Ralph. Naomi makes her A's perfectly round, like little circles. This one has a pointed top. She pointed to specific letters. And she never, ever makes her F's like that. Too fancy, too many loops. Handwriting changes over time. Not this much, not the basic letter formations. Minnie's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent decades analyzing student work. This person is trying to copy her style, but getting the details wrong. I wanted to argue, to defend my fragile hope, but doubt crept in like cold water. The more I looked, the more the differences became obvious. The spacing between words, the rhythm of the letters, even the way the pen had moved across the paper. It all felt foreign. But who would... I started, then stopped. I don't know. But this isn't from our daughter. The envelope suddenly felt heavy in my hands, not with promise, but with deception. Someone had gone to the trouble of imitating Naomi's handwriting, of using our pain against us. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Maybe I'm wrong, Minnie said softly, seeing the devastation on my face. Maybe she learned to write differently, or... No. The word came out flat and dead. You're right. I can see it now. The careful hope I'd built over the past 10 minutes crumbled like a house made of cards. Someone's playing games with us. We sat in silence, the envelope lying between us, like evidence of our foolishness. Outside, children were coming home from school, their laughter drifting through the window, a sound that once would have reminded me of Naomi at that age. We have to open it, I said finally. We need to know what this is about. Minnie nodded reluctantly. Whatever it is, it's not going to be good news. I tore open the envelope anyway, my hands steadier now that hope had died and been replaced by grim determination. If someone wanted to hurt us, I needed to know how and why. The paper crinkled as I unfolded it, my hands moving mechanically now that hope had curdled into dread. Minnie leaned against my shoulder, both of us peering at the single sheet of white paper. Dear Dad, I read aloud, my voice catching on the familiar word that now felt like a lie. Read it all, Minnie whispered. I cleared my throat and continued. I desperately need your help. I'm in the hospital and require emergency surgery that my insurance won't cover. The doctors say I need $15,000 immediately, or I might not survive. Oh my, Minnie gasped. I know we haven't talked in years, but you're the only one I can turn to. Please don't let our past disagreements prevent you from saving your daughter's life. I need you to immediately transfer the money to my cryptocurrency wallet and wallet number. The random string of letters and numbers felt like gibberish in my mouth. I looked at Minnie, whose face had gone pale. Time is critical, I continued reading. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, and they won't proceed without payment. I'm sorry it took a crisis to reach out, but I'm desperate. Please help me, Dad. Your loving daughter, Naomi. The letter fell from my hands, fluttering to the coffee table like a dying bird. That's not how she talks, Minnie said immediately. She never called you Dad in letters. Always Daddy or your name. And cryptocurrency? I shook my head in disgust. Naomi works in IT. If she needed money, she'd use normal banking, not some digital nonsense I don't understand. She'd never be this formal with you either. Even when she was angry, her letters had personality. This sounds like it was written by a robot. I picked up the letter again, scanning for any detail that might feel authentic. Nothing. No mention of her job, her life, no personal touches that would prove this came from my daughter. Just a generic plea designed to extract money from a desperate father. Who does this? My voice cracked with rage. Who targets grieving parents with fake letters from their children? Someone who knows about our situation? Minnie's analytical mind was working now, past the initial shock. They knew Naomi's name, our address, that we've been estranged. This isn't random. But how could they know to use her handwriting, to send it on her birthday? We stared at each other as the implications sank in. Someone had researched us, studied our family dynamics, crafted this deception specifically to wound us where we were most vulnerable. The violation felt almost physical. $15,000, I said, reading the amount again. They really thought we'd fall for this? You were ready to tear open that envelope with pure joy 5 minutes ago, Minnie pointed out gently. If I hadn't noticed the handwriting... She didn't need to finish. I would have believed every word, would have been calling banks and trying to figure out how to send cryptocurrency to save my daughter's life. The scammer had counted on my love, my guilt, my desperate need for reconciliation. I need to call Naomi, I said, standing abruptly. Right now. I need to make sure she's safe, that this isn't connected to something worse. Minnie nodded grimly. And we need to find out who did this. I walked to the kitchen phone, my hands shaking with a different kind of energy now, not hope, but fury. Someone had weaponized my love for my daughter, and I was going to find out who. The kitchen phone sat on the counter like an old friend, black receiver worn smooth from years of family conversations. I snatched it up, my fingers automatically dialing the number I'd memorized 3 years ago but never forgotten. Come on, Naomi, pick up. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before her voicemail clicked on. That familiar voice, professional and distant now. Nothing like the warm daughter who used to call me every Sunday. Naomi, it's your father. Please call me back as soon as possible. It's important. I hung up and immediately dialed again, pacing across the linoleum floor while Minnie watched from the doorway. Same result. Voicemail again. Naomi, this is urgent. Something's happened and I need to talk to you right away. Please, sweetheart, call me back. The endearment slipped out before I could stop it, a remnant from when we still talked, when she still cared what her old man had to say. Third try. My hands were shaking now, whether from anger or anxiety I couldn't tell. Naomi, someone is using your name to try to scam us. They sent a fake letter asking for money, pretending to be you. I need to know if you're safe and if this is connected to something bigger. Call me immediately. I slammed the receiver down harder than necessary. She's not answering, I told Minnie, though that was obvious. Maybe she's at work. It's only 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon. Or maybe he won't let her answer calls from unknown numbers. The thought made my chest tighten. What if he screens all her calls, controls who she talks to? Minnie stepped closer, her hand gentle on my shoulder. Ralph, your blood pressure. You're getting worked up. Of course I'm worked up. Someone is targeting our family, using our pain to steal money, and our daughter won't even take a phone call from her father. The words came out bitter, 3 years of frustration boiling over. What are you going to do? I looked at the fake letter still lying on the kitchen counter, evidence of someone's cruelty and calculation. The cryptocurrency address seemed to mock me with its random string of letters and numbers, so impersonal, so cold. I'm driving over there. Ralph, no, you know how that ended last time. This is different. I'm not going to lecture her about her marriage. I'm going to warn her that someone is using her identity for fraud. I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the back door. She has a right to know someone is impersonating her. What if she doesn't believe you? What if she thinks you made up the letter as an excuse to contact her? The possibility stopped me cold. Naomi was smart enough to consider that angle, suspicious enough after 3 years of silence to question my motives. But the alternative was doing nothing while someone used her name for criminal purposes. Then I'll show her the letter. Let her see the handwriting that isn't hers, the cryptocurrency scam, the generic medical emergency that doesn't match anything real about her life. I headed for the garage door. I can't just sit here knowing someone is targeting our family. Be careful, Ralph. Remember what the doctor said about your heart. I paused at the door, one hand on the knob. My heart's been broken for 3 years, Minnie. A little confrontation won't make it worse. The afternoon sun hit me as I backed out of the driveway, Minnie's worried face visible in the front window. Traffic was light leaving Evanston, but I knew it would get heavier as I approached the city. 45 minutes to Lincoln Park. 45 minutes to figure out what I was going to say to the daughter who'd chosen her husband over her family, who'd refused every attempt at reconciliation, who might slam the door in my face the moment she saw me standing there. But someone was using her name to hurt us, and that crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The engine hummed steadily as I merged onto Lakeshore Drive, downtown Chicago's skyline rising like concrete mountains in the distance. Saturday afternoon traffic moved at a decent pace, giving me too much time to think. Someone had studied our family dynamics carefully enough to know about the estrangement, to time the letter for Naomi's birthday, to forge her handwriting well enough to fool me initially. This wasn't some random scammer casting a wide net. This was targeted, personal, cruel. A delivery truck slowed ahead of me, forcing everyone into the left lane. I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel, watching Lake Michigan stretch endlessly to the east. Gray clouds were building over the water, promising rain later. The anger that had fueled my decision to drive here began mixing with familiar doubt. What if Naomi really did refuse to see me? What if she accused me of harassment, of fabricating the letter as manipulation? 3 years of silence had created a gulf that might be unbridgeable. But the alternative was worse, doing nothing while someone weaponized our family pain for profit. Traffic thickened as I approached downtown, the usual weekend congestion of tourists and shoppers heading to Navy Pier and the Magnificent Mile. I took the North Avenue exit, winding through streets that grew progressively more upscale as I entered Lincoln Park. Naomi's neighborhood represented everything she'd achieved without us: professional success, financial independence, a life carefully constructed to exclude the parents who'd raised her. The townhouses here cost more than I'd made in 5 years of engineering work. I'd driven these streets before during my failed reconciliation attempts, memorizing the route to my daughter's door. The brick facades and manicured gardens spoke of young professionals who'd made it, who belonged to a different social class than their working-class parents. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I imagined the conversation ahead. Best-case scenario, Naomi would listen, understand the threat, maybe even thank me for warning her. Worst case, she'd see this as another attempt to interfere in her life, another reason to keep me at arm's length. What if she genuinely didn't know about the letter? That seemed most likely. Why would she be involved in scamming her own parents? But then who was behind it? Ethan was the obvious suspect. But would he really stoop to forging his wife's handwriting to steal from her family? The neighborhoods changed as I drove deeper into Lincoln Park, from busy commercial streets to quieter residential blocks, lined with expensive cars and joggers in designer athletic wear. These were Naomi's people now, her chosen community of successful urbanites, who probably never dealt with the kind of working-class struggles Minnie and I had faced. I found a parking spot 2 blocks from her townhouse, feeding quarters into the meter with slightly shaking hands. The walk would give me time to prepare, to figure out exactly how to present this situation without sounding accusatory or desperate. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings, and I could hear the distant sounds of a neighborhood barbecue, children playing in a nearby park. Normal Saturday activities for people with normal family relationships. Naomi's townhouse came into view, 3 stories of red brick with black shutters, a small front garden filled with flowers I didn't recognize. Expensive, tasteful, everything she'd wanted that we couldn't provide when she was growing up. Lights were on in the front windows. Someone was home. I stood at the bottom of her front steps, looking up at the burgundy door with its brass knocker and security system panel. 3 years since I'd last stood here. 3 years since she'd chosen her husband over her father's warnings. My finger hovered over the doorbell. The doorbell chimed with an elaborate melody that echoed through the townhouse. Footsteps approached, quick, light steps I remembered from childhood. The security peephole darkened as someone looked through, then went light again. A pause, then the sound of locks turning. The door opened to reveal Naomi, older now, but still unmistakably my daughter. Her dark hair was shorter than I remembered, styled in a way that made her look more sophisticated, more distant. She wore a casual dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Dad?" The word came out flat, neither welcoming nor hostile, just surprised. "Hello, Naomi." We stared at each other across the threshold, 3 years of silence stretching between us like a physical barrier. She looked healthy, which relieved me more than I wanted to admit. No signs of the emergency surgery mentioned in the fake letter. "What are you doing here?" "I need to ask you something important." I reached into my jacket pocket. "Did you write this?" I held out the letter, watching her eyes scan the familiar handwriting that wasn't quite hers. Her brow furrowed as she read, genuine confusion replacing the guarded surprise. "I didn't write this." She looked up at me sharply. "Where did you get it?" "It came in today's mail, on your birthday." "Dad, I haven't written to you in 3 years. I didn't write this letter." Her voice carried conviction, but also something else. Hurt that I would even ask, as if my question proved I didn't know her at all anymore. "Then who did? Who would forge your handwriting to ask for money? You tell me. You're the one who brought it here." "Naomi, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm trying to protect you. Someone used your name, your handwriting, your identity to try to scam $15,000 from your parents." The words came out sharper than I intended. "That's convenient." Her tone shifted from confused to cold. "You fabricate some letter as an excuse to show up at my house uninvited." "Fabricate?" The accusation hit me like a slap. Why would I do that? "Because you've been trying to contact me for 3 years, and this was the only way left." Behind her, I caught sight of Ethan entering the hallway. He wore expensive casual clothes, the kind of weekend outfit that probably cost more than my car payment. His appearance wasn't accidental. He'd been listening. "Naomi? Who is it?" he asked, though he obviously knew. "My father. Apparently someone's been writing fake letters from me asking for money." Ethan's face showed concern, but something flickered in his eyes, too quick for me to identify. "That sounds like a scam. You should report it to the police, Ralph." "Maybe I will." I studied his face, looking for any sign that he recognized the letter. "Strange coincidence, though. $15,000. That's about what someone might lose in a really bad night at the casino." Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I wouldn't know anything about that. Wouldn't you?" "Dad, that's enough." Naomi stepped protectively closer to her husband. "You can't just show up here making accusations." "I'm not making accusations. I'm asking questions." I looked between them, noting how Ethan's hand had moved to Naomi's shoulder. Possessive. Controlling. Someone targeted our family specifically. Someone who knew about our situation, your birthday, your handwriting style. "Anyone could find that information online these days," Ethan said dismissively. "Could they? Could they find samples of Naomi's handwriting? Could they know she's been estranged from her parents for exactly 3 years?" "Dad, you need to leave." Naomi's voice carried finality. "I didn't write that letter. I don't know who did, and I can't help you figure it out." "Can't? Or won't?" "Both." She started to close the door. "Don't come here again without calling first." "I tried calling 3 times. You didn't answer." "Then maybe take the hint." The door closed with a soft but definitive click, leaving me standing on the front step with more questions than answers. I'd accomplished nothing except confirming that Naomi genuinely didn't know about the letter, but Ethan's reaction bothered me. Too defensive, too eager to end the conversation. I walked slowly back to my car, the fake letter still in my pocket, feeling like I'd missed something important. The lock clicked behind me with such finality that I almost turned around to knock again. But Naomi had made her position clear. She didn't want to see me, didn't believe me, and thought I'd fabricated the letter as manipulation. Walking back to my car felt like moving through thick water, each step heavier than the last. The golden evening light that had seemed hopeful during my drive here now felt mocking, illuminating my failure in harsh detail. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, watching Naomi's townhouse shrink in my rearview mirror. 3 years of hoping for reconciliation, and I'd managed to make things worse. She probably thought I was getting desperate in my old age, creating elaborate schemes just to force contact. Traffic moved slowly on Lakeshore Drive, giving me too much time to replay the conversation. Something about Ethan's behavior bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The way he'd appeared so quickly behind Naomi, like he'd been listening, the slight tenseness in his voice when he suggested reporting the letter to police, the protective way he'd stood with his hand on her shoulder. Most telling was his reaction when I mentioned casino gambling. Just a flicker, barely noticeable. But I'd spent 40 years as an engineer, learning to notice when something didn't fit properly. By the time I reached Evanston, instead of turning toward home, I found myself pulling into Dawes Park, the same place where I used to bring Naomi when she was small, where we'd feed ducks and talk about everything and nothing. The bench I chose overlooked the pond, now empty of ducks, but still peaceful in the fading light. I pulled out the fake letter again, studying it with fresh eyes. Minnie had been right about the handwriting. Too many small details were wrong. But whoever wrote this knew enough about our family to target us, specifically. $15,000. the exact amount someone might need to cover gambling debts accumulated over months of bad luck at Chicago's casinos. Someone who had access to samples of Naomi's handwriting, who knew about our estrangement, who understood exactly which emotional buttons to push. Someone who lived in the same house as my daughter. The more I thought about it, the more Ethan's behavior made sense. His eagerness to end the conversation, his defensiveness when I mentioned casinos, the way he'd positioned himself between Naomi and me like a barrier. He wasn't protecting her from an unwelcome father. He was protecting himself from exposure. A cool breeze rustled the trees, carrying the first hint of autumn's approach. Change was coming, whether any of us wanted it or not. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in my pocket. Evidence. Not of Naomi's betrayal, but of someone else's desperation and manipulation. Someone who thought he could use our family's pain for his own financial salvation. The park was growing quiet as families gathered their children and headed home for dinner. Normal families who talked to each other, who didn't have years of silence to bridge, who didn't have to worry about fraud and manipulation tearing them apart. But we weren't a normal family anymore. We were a damaged one, held apart by someone who benefited from our separation. Someone who needed us to stay angry and distant because reconciliation would mean exposure. Standing up from the bench, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Not hope exactly, but determination. Ethan had made a mistake today. He'd shown his hand just enough for someone paying attention to notice. I walked back to my car, already planning what I'd tell Minnie. We needed to wait and watch. If Ethan had written that letter, he'd probably made other mistakes too. Desperate people usually did. The drive home took only 5 minutes, but it felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel into light. For the first time since the divorce, I had a target for my anger that wasn't my own daughter. 3 days passed like slow torture. Minnie and I discussed the situation endlessly, analyzing every detail of my confrontation with Naomi, every suspicious reaction from Ethan. We decided to wait, to let things develop naturally rather than pushing harder and risk making everything worse. Tuesday evening arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched my mood. Minnie was in the kitchen preparing dinner when the doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. "I'll get it," I called, expecting maybe a neighbor or delivery driver. The last person I anticipated seeing was my daughter, standing on the front porch, soaking wet from the rain, clutching a manila folder against her chest. "Naomi?" "Dad, I need to talk to you." Her voice cracked slightly. "I found something terrible." She looked like she'd been crying. Her usually perfect hair hung limp around her face, and her expensive clothes were wrinkled as if she'd thrown them on without care. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. They held the same desperate clarity I'd seen in the mirror 3 years ago. "Come in, sweetheart. You're soaking." I stepped aside, watching her shake rain droplets from her jacket. Minnie appeared in the hallway, took one look at Naomi's distressed state, and immediately shifted into maternal mode. "Oh, honey, what's wrong? Let me get you a towel." "I'm fine, Minnie. Naomi opened the manila folder with trembling hands. "Dad, look at these papers. I found them in Ethan's desk." She spread several sheets across the coffee table. Even from across the room, I could see what they were. Practice sheets filled with handwriting exercises. Row after row of attempts to copy familiar letter formations. "What am I looking at?" I asked, though my heart was already racing. "Practice sheets. He was trying to copy my handwriting." Her voice broke completely. "Dad, look at this one." She pointed to a sheet covered with attempts at writing her own name, her address, even what looked like draft versions of the fake letter I'd received. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. "I found these yesterday when I was looking for our insurance papers. They were hidden in a folder marked business expenses." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I confronted him about it last night." "What did he say?" "At first he denied everything. Said they weren't his, that maybe someone planted them." She laughed bitterly. "But when I pressed him, when I threatened to call you and ask if you'd really received a letter, he confessed?" He broke down completely. "Dad, he has gambling debts. Serious ones. He's been going to the casino in Hammond 3-4 times a week for months. He owes money to people who aren't patient about collecting." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Ethan's nervousness during my visit, his eagerness to get rid of me, his defensive reaction to any mention of gambling. It all made perfect sense now. He targeted you because he knew about our estrangement, Naomi continued. He thought you'd be so desperate to hear from me that you'd send money without asking too many questions. How much does he owe? $37,000. The number fell between us like a stone. The letter asking for $15,000 was just the first payment. He planned to send more letters, different medical emergencies, until he got enough to cover his debts. I sat down heavily, the full scope of Ethan's manipulation finally clear. He hadn't just been a bad husband. He'd been systematically using our family's pain for his own criminal purposes. Dad, I'm so sorry. Naomi's tears started flowing again. You were right about him 3 years ago. You tried to warn me, and I chose him over you. I let him convince me that you were trying to control my life when you were actually trying to protect me. Sweetheart? No, let me finish. I should have listened to you. I should have seen the signs. You and Minnie are the only people in the world who would never lie to me or hurt me, and I threw that away because a manipulator told me I should. Minnie moved to sit beside her on the couch, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The important thing's that you found out the truth. I'm filing for divorce, Naomi said firmly. Tomorrow. I can't stay married to someone who would try to steal money from my parents by pretending to be me. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in 3 years, and saw not the defensive woman who'd shut me out, but the strong, intelligent person Minnie and I had raised. She'd been manipulated and isolated, but she hadn't been broken. Can you forgive me? She whispered. I didn't trust my voice to answer, so I just held out my arms. She fell into them like she was 12 years old again, and for the first time in 3 years, my family was whole. Come on, both of you, Minnie said, standing up and smoothing her apron. Let's sit down properly and talk about this over a meal. I was just making pot roast. There's plenty for 3. We moved into the kitchen together, and I watched Minnie automatically set a third place at our small table. The simple domesticity of the moment, plates and silverware, the smell of dinner, my daughter sitting in the chair she'd occupied as a child, felt like a miracle. I can't believe I let him isolate me from you for so long, Naomi said, accepting the plate Minnie placed before her. He was so subtle about it, always finding reasons why I couldn't visit, why phone calls were inconvenient, why you two were trying to manipulate me. Professional manipulators are good at their work, I said. Don't blame yourself for being deceived by an expert. But the signs were there. The secrecy about money, the way he controlled my schedule, how he always had an explanation for why my family was the problem. She pushed food around her plate absently. He made me believe that choosing him meant proving my independence. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. The important thing is that you saw through it eventually. I should have seen through it 3 years ago when you tried to warn me. Should have, could have, would have. Minnie's voice carried the practical wisdom of decades. None of that matters now. What matters is moving forward. I stood up and walked to the kitchen drawer where I kept matches. Speaking of moving forward, there's something we need to do. I pulled out the fake letter, now wrinkled from being carried around for days. This thing has caused enough damage to our family. Understanding immediately, Naomi nodded. We moved to the kitchen sink, all 3 of us crowding around the basin. I struck a match and held the flame to one corner of the letter. The paper caught quickly, curling and blackening as it burned. Good riddance, Naomi whispered, watching the last traces of Ethan's deception wash down the drain. With the letter destroyed, Minnie disappeared into the living room and returned carrying a thick photo album, the one filled with pictures from Naomi's childhood. She opened it to a page showing a gap-toothed 8-year-old Naomi at a Cubs game, grinning between her parents. Remember this day? Minnie asked. You insisted on getting a hot dog at every inning. And Dad kept buying them for me even though I only ate half of each one. Naomi laughed, the first genuine laughter I'd heard from her in years. We spent the next hour looking through photos, remembering birthday parties and Christmas mornings, family vacations and quiet Sunday afternoons. Each picture was proof that we'd been a loving family once, that the bonds between us were stronger than any manipulator could permanently break. I've missed this so much, Naomi said, touching a picture of herself at 16, rolling her eyes at something I'd said. I've missed having parents who actually cared about my well-being instead of what they could get from me. You'll always have that, I said firmly. No more years of silence. We stay in touch from now on, no matter what. Never again, she promised. And Dad, I want to write you a real letter. Next week, when things settle down. A real letter in my real handwriting, telling you everything I've wanted to say for 3 years. The contrast was perfect. From fake communication designed to steal money to genuine connection meant to rebuild love. It felt like the universe correcting itself. What about Ethan? Minnie asked practically. Where will you stay during the divorce proceedings? I've already moved out, Naomi said. I'm staying at a hotel for now, but I was hoping... She looked between us uncertainly. Could I maybe stay in my old room for a few weeks, just until I find my own place? Sweetheart, this is your home, I said. It always has been. We just lost you for a while. As we cleaned up the dinner dishes together, the three of us moving around the kitchen in comfortable synchronization, I marveled at how quickly the natural rhythms of family life reasserted themselves. It was as if the 3 years of separation had been a bad dream, dissolved by truth and honesty. Later, as Naomi settled into her old bedroom, I stood in the doorway watching her organize her things. She looked younger somehow, freed from the weight of maintaining a marriage built on lies and manipulation. Thank you for not giving up on me, she said quietly. Never, I replied. Family doesn't give up. That's what makes it family. Outside, rain continued falling, washing the world clean for tomorrow. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.